Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on social media trends. I'm Cara Buscaglia, and I'm the VP of Solutions at Talkwalker, and I'm also joined by Albane and Flamant from our marketing team. So today we're going to briefly go over the key trends that are impacting our industry today in 2019, some things that you need to look at for. But before we do that, we're going to do a quick overview and give you some context of who Talkwalker is before we dive into the meat of the conversation. So Talkwalker is a listening and analytics company that empowers over 2,000 companies to optimize the impact of their communication strategy. We actually started in 2009 as a web crawler technology and has since evolved to incorporate other social networks as well. We have 4 offices in San Francisco, New York, Frankfurt, and our headquarters is actually in Luxembourg. I think what makes really Talkwalker unique is our team of 200 experts, including over 70 engineers. So as you can see here, our vast array of clients from various different industries. And what Talkwalker does is that we specialize in 3 key areas around protecting, measuring, and promoting your brand. Additionally, we're recognized by Gartner and Forrester, and we're recently named a strong performer in the Forrester social listening wave that just came out last year. So I'm going to hand it over to Albane to talk through the overall dynamic and outline for this webinar today.
Hi everyone, very happy to be here and welcome to everyone. Really happy to have so many registrants, so many people present live for this webinar. So just to give you a little bit of context, as Cara was telling you, we have a lot of clients in a lot of different industries, so marketing teams, PR teams, social media teams, and a lot of times they come to us and ask us which trends we see as important for the next year. And so we've turned that into an interesting exercise. We do it at the end of every year. I think for me, I've been at Talkwalker for almost 4 years actually, so it's my 4th edition. But since we work with a lot of social media experts and influencers, we come up with the trends we see developed, and then we go see them to have these additional comments. So we go to people like Chris Penn, which is an AI expert. We go to Ginny Dietrich, which is one of the PR references in the US. We go to Rand Fishkin, the founder of Moz, and they gave us some feedback on the trends we see. They give us new trends sometimes that we didn't expect, and that's what we're going to review today. So in the blog, we had 12 trends. Here, we're just going to look at 7 because the time is limited and we want to give you some time to ask us your questions too. So without any further ado, I'm going to be switching to the first trend. So trend number 1, big data, big issue. Brand will concentrate on using the right data and data transparency. So one of the people we had contributing to this specific trend was Chris Penn, so who's notably an IBM champion. So he works very closely with IBM as to the technology they develop. And of course, data has been a huge topic in 2018. Of course, there was Cambridge Analytica, which was kind of a spark for consumers to really start thinking about how their data was being used by different platforms. But overall, even with the GDPR, I think this is really the time for companies to start thinking about the type of data they're collecting and how to use it not only responsibly, but also efficiently. So Chris focused also on the theme of bias in data, which I find very interesting. What do you think, Cara?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you really touched on an interesting point from 2018. I think what we're seeing in 2019 is the need to rebuild trust across the social networks, and that it increasingly needs to be around that data transparency trend. There's been such a rise in fake news with Cambridge Analytica. We saw a lot of distrust in the industry. So it's so important for marketers, communication influencers, and people to have access to that clean and relevant data. And I think that's really going to be something that's really important, and also making sure that they're all compliant with privacy issues and concerns. So this is going to be a huge trend that we need to help with our customers by making sure that they have proper attribution, knowing where the content is coming from. In addition to, I think any data can have a bias if you don't have clear objectives and KPIs that you're setting forth. So we always are recommending to our customers that how crucial and important it is to set up KPIs and really understand the purpose of measurement. So any story can really have any beginning and end, but you need to have those parameters in place.
Love that. Yeah, I think that clear objectives are really the start of any project because basically, I think our CEO likes to say that whenever if you torture data enough, it can tell you whatever. So really super important to have clear objectives, especially in this context with GDPR and more care for data from the public perspective.
Absolutely.
So next trend, this time it's about PR and marketing. So the integration of marketing and PR has been a big question, I think, in
yes,
industry over the last 2 years. 87% think that marketing and communication teams work well together based on a global study performed by Cision at the end of last year. And of course, I mean, marketing and PR teams are essential parts of a lot of company. I mean, one, of course, most focus on selling, the other one more on brand image. Mm-hmm. But I think that with the rise of social, there's a lot of channels that they now have in common. Sometimes they fight over budget, sometimes they fight over results and attribution. But I think that we are seeing a bit of more of a merging this year. And actually, our expert, Jenny Dietrich, is a bit sad actually as a PR professional because she loves making decisions based on data, but she thinks that unfortunately the PR industry maybe didn't take as much of an active role in using data in their day-to-day activity and is now kind of being bypassed by marketing.
Absolutely.
So Cara, as a PR professional, I know that it's been a big part of your background. What do you see? How do you see this trend coming to friction in 2019?
Absolutely. I think having my background being in PR, I think back in the day, there was kind of throwing a dart at a dartboard and hoping for success or virality. I think right now, social media has kind of forced this emergence between PR and marketing. It's the connector. It's the bridge between the two that have forced each other to realize they need to work together and have this integrated communication strategy. No longer does a story live within a journalist's media blog or on the newspaper website. It gets carried and spread throughout social media. So it's really important for marketers and communications to really work together. And I really think that PR needs to kind of open their mind and realize that it's in a state of reintervention, and we need to utilize data the way that marketers were to translate into data-driven decisions and be, more accurate, more precise, and actually, really owning what we're able to do and really connecting pattern and known to complete that story, I think is really important for 2019.
Okay, yeah, I guess personally, I think I'm a bit biased because here at Talkwalker, so I'm in a marketing department, but we kind of already integrate PR into that. So we take care of, we also take care of the press releases and things like that. But I think it will be very interesting to see how that shapes up in 2019, and if 2019 is finally that year where PR and marketing merge.
Yeah, of course, and even just adding on to that, I think marketing has always been, a true ability to use that data and really tell a story, and now PR is really realizing how valuable that is. So I'm glad to hear you're ahead of the curve in Talkwalker and having that integrated communication strategy in place.
Sounds good. Next trend, growing upwards. Enterprise businesses will focus on data maturity. So data maturity is a big thing. So I think that kind of connects to the trends we mentioned earlier with more and more data being available, but also the need to use it responsibly and effectively. And so what we try to do with some of our clients is when they come to us and they're not used to using online and social data, is to start with basic KPIs, but then teach us to upgrade their measurement basically and start using the insights they gather throughout the company. So you see the different stages here, but also using insights from data from other departments to cross it with social and online data to make more of a difference. So Cara, I know you work with clients from several industries. How do you see them grow in terms of data maturity?
Yeah, of course. So I think it's really about understanding consumer behaviors. I see social as the bridge to understand that consumer voice. It's really, you have this database of information of quick verbatims of how people are reacting to specific product launches, what they care about, and you need to be able to translate that into action. But then also you need to realize that no channel is the same, and you really need to understand your messages and what people are talking about each channel so you can directly target them. And then additionally, I think what's also really important is this idea of the customer journey, which I think Joanne Sweeney Burke actually hits the nail on the head with this quote. Is it's so key to utilize social to understand the customer journey, and then going back to that digital maturity of integrating other data sources to it. So social is one piece of the pie, but being able to integrate website analytic data, sales data, and really truly understanding that path to purchase that drives consumer behaviors is really going to become imperative to succeed in 2019.
Right, and so it's going away from soft metrics and really connecting marketing and PR initiatives to the bottom line of the company.
Exactly. And I think the way we do that at Talkwalker is actually through developing a robust framework around the key areas that could potentially impact the brand. So we set out and did a bunch of research in the industry over a year and a half ago, where we spoke to several different consultants and really spoke to our customers to figure out how social listening could be used across an entire organization. And what we really came to really understand was these three core areas of a business where social can have a direct impact. And it's really about protecting your brand, really being able to track issues from the known to the unknown by developing an issue framework through predictive alerts, reputation management, utilizing the same practices that have been done in the industry to date through market research and surveys, but utilizing social as a base foundation for that to understand your e-reputation, and then finally how to look at that from a crisis perspective. Looking at measurement, it's really more about connecting, talking about that, bridging the gap between PR and social and marketing initiatives, combining and looking how stories evolve from one channel to the next, and how influencers can help amplify your messages and take content to new levels, which is really imperative. And then obviously measuring your brand health, which is more traditional, I would say. From a promotion angle, we really look at several different use cases to uncover brand insights that can take your brand image to the next level. So it's looking at influencers, which I know we'll touch on a bit later and extensively, but then also looking at those consumer insights. Again, that path to purchase is really key here, but then also like trend research as well, I think is really key, especially for product innovation. A lot of our customers today are coming to social media to help inspire strategies to innovate. In fact, one of our customers actually found a new flavor to incorporate and do research on to launch a product, which is pretty remarkable to see those real-time data turn into insights and action.
Yeah, and also understanding like where the industry is going to drive the content strategy, for example. That sounds good. So at this time, we're going, by the way, so to make it a bit more interactive, we're going to launch a poll with these different use cases, and would be interested in seeing, so if you can answer that poll, we'll touch on it at the end of the webinar. So for you, which of these 5 poll is most relevant? So now we'll be looking at the next trend. Okay.
Oh, we're getting some good results in.
Okay, perfect.
It looks like most people are interested in brand monitoring and consumer insights, followed by PR measurement and influencer marketing, and then competitive intelligence. So that's really great to see.
Okay, very good. So I think we'll touch a bit more about on brand monitoring at the end then. Thank you very much. Let's go back to the presentation then. Next trend, it's one I really like. I'm a bit biased. It's all about AI. So comms will embrace artificial intelligence. So I know it's a bit of a scary word maybe for some. But I really like what Gartner was pushing in one of the latest articles, which was the concept of democratized AI. So it's AI that impacts basically our day-to-day lives, as opposed to the buzzword we've seen in previous years. For me, AI in the words of communication is a technology that doesn't replace people themselves, but just get rid of manual tasks, basically. So it will accelerate processes, it will improve results accuracy, so we get rid of irrelevant data, basically. And yeah, eliminate routine tasks, so very essential. So Cara, do you think we should be, what's your take on this? How do you see AI impacting like our day-to-day tasks as marketers or PR professionals? And should we be scared?
You shouldn't be scared. I wish AI was around 10 years ago, and I really see it as a way to arrive at insights quicker. And there's a couple different, I completely agree with what elements you've highlighted here and key points, Albane. I think there's a couple different ways that the AI is going to really impact the PR agency. And one is it's going to eliminate repetitive tasks. Like, that's one. I think people are going to be able to be more insight driven and have AI help achieve that level of goal, and really not focus on creating mundane media lists. I remember doing that back in the day and how tedious it was to build based on these categories, using AI to find those different right journalists to reach out to based on the content that you're trying to reach out to. Additionally, I think you can utilize AI to become more targeted with PR. I think they'll be able to test subject lines in addition to facts and virality and messages. Further, I think you'll be able to use AI to look at influencers, same way from a media list perspective, but detect influencers that maybe have fraud attached to them. Like, that's a huge issue. And being able to capitalize on AI to help drive that is really key. A couple other ones, and I think AI is really, I'm really excited about AI and PR. I think they'll be able to create more accurate buying personas to take, targeted media strategies to that next level. And also from a crisis perspective, utilize AI to predict crisis that's happening or how to best react to that. And those are just some of the key of many elements that I think AI is really going to evolve over the next couple of years and be utilized in the PR industry.
Okay, yeah, and I guess we can also talk about concrete examples as to how we use AI here at Talkwalker, basically to improve our listening and analytics. Basically, I think there are three main ways we use it today.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the first one, I'll even touch on this because, I love seeing AI used for our customers, and it's around using our image recognition technology. So actually, Talkwalker pioneered was one of the first companies to release our own proprietary image recognition capabilities, and it all stemmed by AI and being able to find those relevant patterns and using neural networks to dissect the context of the image. So not only just look at a logo, but look at the objects and scenes associated with it. And I think step one was looking at sponsorship effectiveness. But where I think image recognition is really crucial is looking at brand positioning. So oftentimes you'll actually, particularly in the sports industry or apparel industry, someone will say, I love my New Balance sneakers, but they'll be wearing Lululemon pants and an Adidas sweatshirt. Is that really the right influencer to help you with brand positioning? Is that really going to create that authentic content?
Okay, so basically the idea is that not only do we find new insights by looking at the content of images, but we also identify hidden brand mention, basically, right?
Exactly. And also potential partnerships that you didn't know about. It doesn't have to be all about competition, but complementary brands that you didn't think about partnering with before. I think that will really utilizing image recognition in that area, and then also combining different elements of an image. So here, like looking at a combo meal by combining a cup and a sandwich of two images together to understand the decline of sales in quick service restaurants is an example that comes to mind.
Okay, so to connect it to what we were saying earlier, eliminating routine tasks. Sometimes I think that PR professionals have had to look at everything manually.
Oh man,
and
yeah.
Now we can look at 450,000 images if you want to, and have more faster insights.
Yeah, and contextualize that data quicker to arrive at those insights. The second one that I think is always important and a tricky one that we can all attest to is sentiment analysis. And I think the biggest thing to remember here is, we took a different approach here at Talkwalker. We used to historically use NPL for sentiment analysis, and then, a year and a half, 2 years ago now that we launched our AI sentiment, which basically takes the same principles that we did with the image recognition capabilities and applies it to understand sentence structure. So again, looking at dissecting an image, but now dissecting the contents and nuances of a sentence to have accurate sentiment. But one thing that I think is really interesting about sentiment analysis, and what I actually found from my days of doing traditional media analysis, is that sentiment is subjective. Obviously, a machine can only, be, somewhat perfect, as same as a human can only interpret things that same way. If you even send out a batch of articles to 3 different people, it can come back coded or diagnosed in different sentiments, because things can be subjective and have different tone, and if you have that context to it. So I think using AI is a stronger, more efficient methodology to create more of that consistency that can often get from, human analysis.
Right, and I think that connects to our last concrete example, custom models.
Yes, of course, because sentiment analysis is not perfect and it is subjective. We think our out-of-the-box sentiment is pretty strong, but we also realize that every industry and every customer is different. So last year we gave the power back to the users to build their own custom AI models. And this is really good for sentiment analysis to understand emotional aspects, but then the other layered part of it that really helps is especially things that are absolute, like brand names, or having an absolute name of a product that is often confused, like Apple. That's one of our favorite examples, right, Albane?
Right,
maybe you can talk about that one.
Yeah, well, of course, I guess that if I was working in a marketing team at Apple, it'd be kind of a nightmare to manually try to source all the Apple brand mentions compared to mentions of the Big Apple or New York, or Apple the fruit, Apple juice, Apple teeny. It'd be terrible. But so that's the way to do it. So train the machine to recognize what qualifies as a relevant brand mention for me as a marketer. But also, I think that, Talkwalker is pretty cool, but it doesn't know who's sitting in front of the computer, basically. So if you have a result that says, I like Pepsi and I hate Coca-Cola, it's a great result for Pepsi, it's a negative result for Coca-Cola. But how does Talkwalker know who's sitting in front of the computer? Well, with the AI engine, you can say, well, any result that looks like that is positive for me, and any result that looks like this is negative. And the AI can learn from that. So very interesting, and I think that's where we go when we talk about democratized AI. It's AI you can really use in your day-to-day life like this to tweak the tool to your specific preferences.
Yeah, and there's so many other ways, and definitely encourage you guys to look into these different methods that will help your brand and help your objectives and initiatives to be smarter with your time and more efficient and get those actionable results, which I think we're all striving for.
Yeah, and I think that Michelle Garrett, that was another one of our experts, agrees with you. She really sees AI as making a big impact this year in marketing and public relations. Next trend. Oh, I love this one.
Me too.
It's another tech trend, but very interesting. So multimedia search will shake up marketing. So here, basically, we're talking about 2 types of technology. We're talking about voice search, and again, a little bit about image search. So voice search. You have, I guess most of you already at least heard of this one, but let's talk a bit more about the concrete application. So you see that voice search has been prioritized, one of the top priorities for marketers interviewed by eProspect for 2019. Of course, that home assistants or smart speakers are everywhere. Here you can see the percentage of the US population that currently has a smart speaker in their home, or their office, which is pretty crazy, and I think it's only going to grow this year. But what does it mean when you write a piece of content, for example? I think that one of the aspects that we're really going to look at, and I have to do that because I do have to write content and think SEO very often, is that the type of queries we're going to see on search engines is going to change. So for example, if I want to know what the weather is like in New York, well, on Google, if I type the query, I'm going to type weather New York, for example. But if I have to ask it to Alexa or to Google Home, I'm going to use a full sentence to ask, how cold is it in New York, maybe? And that's going to change the whole way, basically, you should structure your article. And with voice search growing and growing, I really think that's something you should think about for your strategy in 2019.
That's a huge point. I think that's you have to think about the evolving trends and how they're going to directly impact your business. Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, and actually you can really see some big media like the New York Times, for example. I'm a huge fan of the Daily podcast. They've actually made it accessible through Alexa now, which is
wow,
it's already
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and you have more and more companies, well, more and more brands doing that. I think NPR did the same thing. I heard the same thing on my podcast the other morning. They're making it more accessible through voice search, which is really cool. Next huge one is image search. So very cool example. And again, a lot of brands are stepping up their game in that respect. So with image search being more and more accessible in terms of technology, you see things like a partnership between Snapchat, so here in the example, and Amazon. So where you have products that are featured in Snapchat stories that are directly connected to the Amazon page, so customers can buy them. And that happens actually in other sectors that are less evident, like luxury retail, for example.
Absolutely.
I read about this brand, which basically it's a retail store for luxury items. And in their app now, you have the option to upload images of clothes you like, maybe something you see you saw on one of your friends, and you can upload it and find items that are similar to these images, which I find super interesting.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point in this images and direct to purchase, and I think social is really impacting every phase of the customer journey. And I think the direct to consumer brands have really hit the nail on the head here, and what they've been really able to pioneer this idea. I think it really started out with influencers or the Warby Parkers or the Caspers of the world, really creating these communities to connect and drive sales. And I think what I think is a really interesting term that I've heard thrown around is having more emotional commerce and really being able to tell a story and really build that loyalty and trust through a community that's less product focused, but still driving a direct connection, which you're seeing right here with Amazon. But I also think Instagram has actually really done a great job of this with being able to do that. And I think in 2019, this emotional commerce is really going to become, a big point that you need to include in your strategy there.
Yeah, and I think marketers are becoming more and more skilled at basically integrating social, so Snapchat or Instagram or other things like that, in every step of the customer journey, basically.
Exactly. And I think, influencers, again, it started out with an influencer community, and they figured out, hey, not only can I get paid to post about products, but I can create my own and sell them and really monetize that.
Very cool. And I think that we all want kind of like Travis Foley, which is also a specialist in influencer marketing, that tells us that as consumer, how amazing would it be to see something you like, take a picture, and be able to buy, research it at a moment's notice. So he calls it Shazam for shopping, and I think we're really close to seeing that on a much wider scale.
Absolutely. There's no fresh. I think also we are in the midst of an expectation economy, well, not in the midst, it's already happened, where we expect everything instantly with a snap of our fingers. We don't want to wait. We don't want to research what this brand is that this celebrity is wearing, that a micro or macro influencer is showing. We want the instant ability to Shazam for shopping and really buy it instantly, because if I don't have access to it right away, I'm probably not going to buy it later.
I'm curious to see which brands will be best at, picking up on that, basically. Next trend. So, okay, this is a huge one. And actually, when we sent that one to our experts, we actually get so many quotes back that we were wondering if we should just drop all the other ones and focus on that one, because they seem to all want to talk about this specific one. And this actually prompted us to do a wider study on the state of influencer marketing that we'll be publishing next month. So a little preview here. So far, 68% of the almost 1,000 marketers that we interviewed in the study told us that they didn't have an official influencer marketing program yet. So tons to do there. But at the same time, I think we do have clients that come to us and have tons of questions as to how they can finally use influencer marketing as an effective strategy. I think right now we're finally coming out of the experimentation phase, where you do have a lot of brands that tried it, but they're not sure which types of influencer to work with. They're not sure who they should trust. I think authenticity is really a big question. And finally, they're not sure how to measure ROI, because everything leads back to the company bottom line. If they're going to invest money in it, they don't see results.
Yeah, of course. And what we're seeing here is these are all really valid questions and something we hear a lot from our customers. And I think the biggest misconception is there's this one-size-fits-all approach to influencer marketing. I think what's really important that you need to do is figure out what your goals and objectives are and try to find the right influencer and program for you guys to help with the different initiatives. So what I mean by that is, like, from a celebrity perspective, those don't typically drive the abundance amount of sales, but they're more of the hygiene influencers. And I think in 2019, what we're going to see a lot more brands doing is looking for these micro communities where they're really going to reach out to them because they know that they're the brand loyalists, and they're really going to help build trust within the community, because I think in 2018 we saw a lot of that trust gone, and I think this is the rebuilding year.
Okay, so again, I think a connection between several of the trends you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
And yeah, just to give you a really quick insight, because I have 5 in the presentation and I'm not going to force you to read all of them, but they're worth it. So here, Harry Hugo from the best influencer marketing agency in the world, self-proclaimed, but still very interesting, sees influencers really becoming their own channels, basically. We have Neil Schaffer, which is a well-known author on this topic, that thinks that micro-influencers have either priced themselves out of the market or have engaged in ways that many brands feel does not make their content look authentic enough. So again, what you were saying, Cara, this drive towards micro-influencers. Same thing for Karen, who thinks that micro-influencers are really the influencers of the year for 2019. Lilac talks about entrepreneurs as influencers.
I think this is a huge opportunity, actually. I think people need that human face, and I think we'll see more of that in 2019. They want that connection with the brand, and that's usually through the owner of the company or the founder of that company to express the vision of the company, and again, really connect with the community, connect with the audience. And I think entrepreneurs are you're already seeing a lot of them popping up and really being the face of the companies, and I think that will really catapult in 2019.
And some of them may make it their own business, like Gary Vaynerchuk, right?
Oh, yeah. He's got a lot of opinions.
For sure, but very interesting.
Very interesting.
And then Rand Fishkin also has what also has an interesting opinion, sorry. So he wants basically 2019 to be the year where we get away from the hype and focus more on ROI.
Love it.
Last trend, we're getting there. Doing it on purpose. So huge topic right now. I think we just had some very recent news that built on that trend, but so brand purpose and social activism will be key in 2019. So I think that, of course, the spark in all that is the Nike campaign in September that really took, I think, well, social media for sure by storm, but also as a whole, I think for about 24, 48 hours, that's all the US was talking about. I think we had 6 million mention of the Nike brand within 24 hours. And at first, some people said it was a lot of negative comments. But Nike actually did very well in the medium term, at least, thanks to this campaign. They sold hundreds of thousands of shoes thanks to it. They got a lot of positive press actually in the section in the segments of consumers that they were interested in. Even in terms of stock price, they bounced back very quickly actually from the original dip. And I think that as a marketing professional, everybody was kind of looking at it and being kind of amazed by the campaign because it was very, very bold.
Yeah.
And I think we're still kind of wondering if it's the right move or not, but I think it inspired a lot of brands. What do you think?
I mean, it says it right there, believe in something. If you believe in something, it comes back to the brand purpose. And we'll go through some other examples in this area, but I think what I love about brand purpose and what I think it's so important for brands to not just be about products. They really need to, ignite action and evoke emotion and raise awareness. And that's something I think this Nike campaign really did. And, brands are really trying to figure out how they can kind of build off of this. And, we saw a lot of reputational issues that happened in 2018. I think Uber saw, significant decline because of some of their reputational challenges. And now they're trying to rebuild and give people the confidence. And you can do that through a couple different areas, whether it's, CSR or giving back and building a community and showing that we're not selfish as a brand. You need to care about civilization and people around you.
Right, and I think at the same time, so it's not so much about basically it's about the issue that they defend basically should be in accordance with the brand value. So I think that if we could go back to the backstage of the decision behind this campaign, I'm sure they did tons of audience research to make sure that it was in accordance with their brand DNA, but also targeting the right audience, so people that are actually buying their shoes and things like that. And I think that in the end, that's really you have to be true to yourself. If you just take a stance that doesn't fit with what you've done before, people are going to call you out for it. And I was really interested to read the latest Albane Trust Barometer that says that nearly 2/3 of consumers around the world, 64%, will buy or boycott a brand solely because of its position on a social or political issue. So that's a lot of pressure.
It's so true though, and I think what even feeds into that is your reputation, these core values, what your company stands for, your vision as a company, and that embodies what you products you provide, but then also who you are and how you represent yourself from a leadership perspective all the way down to employee advocacy level, which is really key. And I'll ask you the question, like with this Nike ad, if Nike didn't have a good reputation, would it have been successful?
Probably not, but we've seen others like very successful campaigns. So I'm thinking that point is going to be more familiar maybe for our UK listeners, but also I mean it went past that. And I think if I remember correctly, it won the holiday ad of 2018. This is Iceland supermarkets no palm oil campaign basically. So an ad that was so political actually that it was banned from UK TV.
Oh my goodness.
But ended up being published on YouTube anyway and went viral that way because so many big celebrities shared it and big influencers shared it. So and virtually from a brand that probably nobody knows outside of the UK. So huge win for that brand too. And it just keeps on going because brands are trying. So of course, if you haven't seen it, you have to have a look at it. The Gillette ad that came out, was it last week?
Yeah, really recent.
Yeah, so also lots of controversy around it. And I think that we're going to see hit and miss also, but very interesting campaigns from 3 very interesting brands.
And again, with Gillette, like, what about that? It's such a powerful piece, what they did of, really taking a stand. And, I felt like it was a really strong move and it was very important for the time that we recognize these core values that we want to embody as a company and these key societal initiatives that we need to support to, again, raise awareness, evoke emotion, and ignite action. And I think that's what all of these campaigns right here did.
Right, and I think that even for Iceland supermarkets, for example, the only reason that worked is that before that year, they had already taken off their shelves all like palm oil-based products in their stores.
Absolutely.
So it's really necessary. So we have some very interesting quotes from some of our experts here. So here, Deirdre tells us that consumers used to accept that their favorite brands were neutral. So they were told, brand managers were told to not to pick sides, to avoid topics and statements that alienate any audiences. But now there's a whole set of different consumer expectations.
Absolutely. I think, you kind of have to be able to speak to everyone with your product. You can't really isolate, but at the same time, you have to try to be more, personalized with your messaging as well and being able to target to specific audiences. So it's going to be a really hard and challenge one for marketing and PR professionals to navigate through that complex landscape because you have to be broad but specific, all in the same campaign.
Very interesting. And then final quote. So Sarah tells us that we should watch out basically because there's more coming. And I'm really, really curious to see how that's going to shape up 2019. But yeah, so I'm going to maybe let you, Cara, finish with some takeaways for our audience, and then we'll take your questions.
Absolutely. So I think some key takeaways that we want to take away from these trends of 2019, it's 2019 is not going to be easy. I think it's a rebuilding year, and I think the key here is democratize data to really drive those decisions within your organization. So, we want to utilize data to figure out what resonates with your audience, segment those audiences, empower people within your organization to think about data differently and debunk that it's complex and it's too challenging. It can make your lives easier, and it can really help you thrive in this changing landscape that we're in, and really use it to help drive trends and drive action within your organization. Also, I think what's really important that I often recommend to our customers is really taking time to define your objectives and KPIs. You have to link them to your bottom line. Really grow in digital maturity by incorporating other data sources into social, and really do some data blending, understand what's happening on social, how that relates to some of your primary research objectives, and then how that actually impacts your bottom line by looking at sales. Having the complete landscape and comparing all these data sets is really going to be key, and it all has to be linked to what your goals, KPIs, and objectives are. That's so crucial. Then I think finally, I think we said this before, reputation is so key, and find your brand purpose. Find your narrative, find your influencers to grow your reputation, and be authentic. And I think if you incorporate all these elements into your strategy in 2019, you'll be successful.
Amazing. Thank you, Cara. And yeah, I think that these 3 takeaways are really key, but we're curious to see which questions you have, or maybe what you're taking away from this presentation. So we'll open the floor to questions. Please use the chat to ask us your questions. So we're both here, and we're on time, so that's good. We have a few minutes to answer your questions.
Absolutely. So one question comes out about AI. So what do you think about the creative potential of AI? And do you see AI to be utilized to automate the creation of campaigns, or just steering them in terms of reach?
I think there was an example recently of an auto brand that decided to let an AI create the whole campaign. I think that we have to be very careful for that. It's like letting AI write, media articles and things like that. For certain things it can work, and it's for something that's very routine, like reporting on a small earthquake, it can be interesting. Mm-hmm. But I think that the real creative value is always going to have to be human involved. Absolutely. To put back everything into context, basically.
Absolutely. So I think you'll be able to put in different topics that potentially could inspire a campaign, or using AI to see if a story's already been done before. Or a topic's been done, and how people responded to that, and using that to almost inform your strategy, I think is key. And you'll need that human component, but you'll definitely be able to be more efficient in that.
Very nice.
Another question that's coming through is if we could talk a little bit more about micro-influencers.
From Alex.
Yeah, exactly.
Micro-influencers. So it's true that it's a tricky world, because usually we look at size of communities basically to define influencer size. So micro-influencers, that can vary depending on your industry mainly. So because, for example, if you work in tech, usually you're dealing with smaller communities than maybe more B2C industries. Like, if you're McDonald's or Wendy, you're going to have huge communities. Yeah. If you're a luxury brand, you're going to have huge millions of people in your community as an influencer. But micro-influencers, usually I think we look at less than 10,000 followers generally, but again, it can vary based on industry. So people that have a very niche community, basically, so smaller, very engaged communities. So again, the community size can a bit vary based on the industry, but small community, very engaged, and usually focus on a specific aspect. So absolutely. It can be, mom's gardening, or it can be anything. It can be hat influencers.
The possibilities are really endless, and then having that data at your fingertips to look into those small communities based on, again, what your core values are and what you're trying to achieve, I think is really important. I think even with these massive brands, it's about trying to find these local communities that have a really strong, engaging community will be authentic to your brand and allow you to get really personalized content out there.
Very nice.
And then we have another question on how do you think multimedia search will change shopping mall dynamics?
Oh, wow, that's broad.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, though.
Well, first of all, maybe there's going to be less shopping malls. That's one aspect. Because people, like we saw it with the Snapchat, Amazon partnership. In this case, you're bypassing the shopping malls and you're going straight from the Instagram stories to the online store. So maybe it will be a boost for e-commerce brands. I mean, we've already seen the impact of Amazon on retail stores. It's been pretty significant. I don't think that Amazon will take over everything, but I do think it's going to definitely change the landscape in that respect.
I definitely think I agree with you. It has changed the landscape, but what I think is going to be really interesting for retailers is it's going to be less about the retailer, but more about the experience that you create for the consumer.
Digital, I think.
Yeah. When you go into the space and you're more greeted by maybe uniforms or costumes that resonate with the brand image and like interactive experiences, places for social media pictures.
Right.
To really again take a retail, brick and mortar traditional experience and transform it in a digital age.
It's true that you even have some stores that do these smart mirrors. Have you seen them where you can, try on the clothes directly on yourself without like physically putting them on?
Marcus did launch that first.
Yeah, you can. And I saw one at CES where you can change your hair color, your makeup, to try a totally different look. So yeah, I think maybe that whole experience will be much stronger.
Yeah.
So maybe smaller, more qualitative, basically shops.
Yeah, I think making it almost art, making your retail experience art is going to be huge in 2019. I think you'll have more of experiences and not just like events like come visit my store because, I'm launching a product, but it's more everyday experiences. I think it's going to be great.
Very nice, and thank you for all your questions. We're sorting through the list right now because there are a lot of them, so sorry if we can't answer them all, but we're happy to discuss all of these on Twitter after the webinar if we don't address all of them. What's the next question?
Yeah, the next question is, what do you think the best way to measure ROI when your goals to include sales and marketing, like for example, to not include sales and marketing, for example, like nonprofit or education or government agencies? Oh, that's a good one.
It's a really good one. Actually, I was just having this discussion with someone who works for a Philharmonic, basically. She was saying that even then she was getting some pressure of marketing as to set basically the performance that sold best. But she said that they also had to include, of course, like the goal of the NGO in that sense, like which was promote, art, music, things like that. But I do think that most organizations do have that, have to sustain themselves most of the time. So they have, for NGO, they have funding that they have to work with. And so maybe they can find the best practices. Maybe the question is in terms of brand visibility, so it depends. We come back to that idea. What are your objectives and which KPIs can you best use to reach these objectives?
Yeah, and just echoing on that, we work with a lot of universities, and their KPI, so to say, is how they generate awareness, which inherently leads to more admissions.
Right. And
so that can be a different way. You just have to think of things outside of monetary value because that's just one piece of the puzzle. And honestly, ROI is such a bold statement, and it's really hard to tie social directly to that ROI. And what we really try to emphasize with our customers is how we can help measure your impact, and that is layered into so many different facets of your business, whether it's driving more administration or applications to your university, whether it's driving ticket sales. That's more monetary, but it's this more idea of awareness and building that brand loyalty and trust.
Right, and maybe sometimes what we also see some people like looking up at some great example in industry and figuring out what they're missing to get the same reach in terms of brand visibility, the same share of voice, or if you want to be very active on a topic. So that's some other KPIs we can use in this context.
Absolutely. And then another question we're getting, we're jumping around different areas, but I think it's good to get all these questions in, is what is the best way to market a service or product? Is the narrative different? And how is this best to capture the attention of a CEO?
Okay, so much we could say here. Do you want to get started?
Yeah. So I think, again, I think we've echoed this. It's really about figuring out who your brand is, what the product is, and looking at the back end first. Use social to do that research. I mean, primary research is a great outlet, but it's also very expensive. If you can access social data and use that to inspire how you market specific products, I think it's a really smart and efficient way to do that. You can also see what's trending, what's driving a lot of engagement, and that will inherently, help you craft the narration and help you create content.
I remember one of our clients was using social to basically understand how people were talking about smartphone, if the brightness of the screen, or basically the quality of the camera, or see basically what people were frustrated in the industry right now with the products that they had at hand, and how they could create basically a product that solved all of these expectations.
Perfect. This is an interesting one that we haven't really touched on. Are there any trends for social giveaways and contests?
Trends for social giveaways. Yeah, we didn't really touch on that one.
I think it's kind of dated.
A bit. Well, there's still a bunch of industries using them, so they try to newsjack some events like maybe March Madness, and try to get. It's another way to get involved. Giveaways, I think people are still interested in it, but it's a very specific segment of consumers. So
yeah.
But I kind of agree with you. It's kind of getting in the back mirror slowly.
Yeah, I think back in several years ago, contests were all the rage. Like every brand was doing a contest to give away, and it was usually to drive people to sign up for their brand. And I think we're still seeing some partnerships where they do cross contests and giveaways to bolster community size. That's where I only see the only advantage, and there's less on these big contests that are more blown out, but it's more targeted on the smaller community level.
Yeah, the only way I see maybe where contests have evolved in terms of giveaways and things like that is when they do it through influencers. I've seen that a little bit.
Yeah,
that's a bit different. That's maybe a new way to do it. It's through influencers to help them bring value to their community.
Perfect. And then let's just wrap up with one more question here. I think it is around AI applications that can start using today that will improve communication processes.
It depends. I mean, that's something that just going to vary a little bit based on the tools you're using. So it can be, if it's within your social listening tool, or analytics tool, maybe see how you can basically look at bigger data sets and extract insights. So even on Google Analytics, for example, Google Analytics is something that's free and that everybody uses.
Yeah.
They have this insights section basically where their AI looks at your data and it gives you some prompts as to interesting insights you should use. Use that. Start using that. Start getting more familiar with that. Mm-hmm. And then just overall, look at that AI part in your tool to help you rationalize your use of data, basically.
Absolutely. And a lot of what we see here, Talkwalker is using AI for sentiment analysis, detecting issues, and being more predictive in terms of our alerting capabilities to determine if you need to react to certain items. And then I think, just understanding key message pull through is another final way. But I think, again, we're really just scratching the surface here. And
so many applications.
There's so many applications, and I challenge you to look into it and start involving them in your strategy to make things simpler for you.
Yeah, I think, maybe one concrete way would be to, set up an alert for AI linked to your industry topics.
Exactly.
A good thing. Also, improve your communication process. I think there's a lot of things that's already running in your back end that you don't see. So we're talking about image search and that partnership between Amazon and Snapchat. Well, AI is based on that to find a product basically and connect it to Amazon.
Absolutely.
So there's already a lot of things that are running in the background. So keep your eyes open for innovation in your specific sector, basically. Okay. We're going to let you go because we took about an hour of your time. But thank you so much for joining us. So
thank you, guys.
We'll be back next month with a webinar on the results of our influencer marketing survey, which I'm super excited about. So I hope you'll join us for that, and we might have an interesting guest. So check back with us for this one, teasing a little bit. But yeah, so if you have additional questions that we didn't have time to address now, feel free to contact us both on Twitter or on LinkedIn. We'd love to continue the discussion. Feel free to join us next month. And yeah, keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.